100.
And welcome back to the state capitol. It's always good. This is the second time they've joined us. Plus, I've been in touch with Eric Campbell before and Darren Schmidt. Darren is a probation officer down in Broome County. He started out working at the McCormick Center, a youth facility that was near Ithaca, and it was at that youth facility some 15 years ago, I think, that he met Eric Campbell. Darren met Eric, who is from New York City. He's here as well. Both of them are appearing tonight at Fulton Montgomery Community College, speaking on the topic, Choices of a Child, the Story of Consequences and the Road to Redemption. Eric Campbell runs a recording studio in Brooklyn now. He's come up from New York City. He had been in this youth facility far away from home in Ithaca. From moving on from the McCormick Center, Darren Schmidt, as noted, became a probation officer where he works now in the Binghamton area. And the two have been kind of on a road show talking about the unique impact they've had on each other's lives. And they're speaking at a time when the governor's administration has implemented what's called a close-to-home policy, trying to move youth facility locations close to where a lot of the youth who are in these facilities are from, generally New York City. And with that by way of background, let me welcome Darren and Eric to the show. Good morning, guys. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning, Fred.
Thank you for having us.
Darren, if you would, why don't you start first and talk about what you're going to be talking about tonight, and maybe you could talk a little bit about the kind of reception you and Eric have been getting, because you'd mentioned to me that this is the fourth appearance that you've made together talking about how your lives intersected.
Sure. We began talking, I brought Eric to my class, actually, at Broome Community College.
Very
I'm an
nice.
adjunct instructor. And the students were very receptive, asking a lot of questions. So we decided to reach out. Our next engagement was at the Criminal Justice Educators of New York State. And they said, you guys really should travel around and go to community colleges and talk to students, talk to teachers, bring in the public, and let them know, from my perspective, what it's like to work in a facility, coming right out of college, going into this facility where I had to learn everything.
On that point, let me just ask you about what this new initiative, which seems pretty sensible, I think, to most people, close to home, meant to you in terms of were you from upstate when you were working in this facility? So you're in upstate, and I assume a lot of the young people who are at the facility were like Eric from New York City?
They were, I would say, mid-90%.
Do you think that culture difference really does, and maybe ethnic or racial as well, in terms of the makeup of the people who are supervising kids from the city, do you think that that does make a difference, and therefore the idea of moving these facilities back closer to where the kids come from makes a lot of sense, or do you think it doesn't? Maybe it's good to get them away from the area, and then I'll ask Eric about that in a minute.
No, I think this is a great initiative. I think the governor's right on with what he's proposing. Yes, it made a big difference. The staff were from upstate. There were culture norms that I didn't understand, and we joke about it today. It took a while to adapt to this environment, to these kids. 95% of them were from New York City. And that's some of the things we laugh about today, is the fact that you either, as a staff, you either get it and you get on board and you start to understand, or you're going to get past it and have a lot of problems.
Eric, let me ask you about that as well. One of the arguments that was being made, and I'm sure you had heard it, it was made by the union that represented the people in these youth facilities and by individuals themselves, is that, and also I think from a social worker point of view, that it was a good thing to get young people who were involved with violating the law or were persons in need of supervision out of the environment where they came from, say New York City, maybe a ghetto area or just a poor area, get them upstate, 5 hours away from the bad influences that created what they created, and therefore it had a wholesome impact, and maybe the kids could straighten themselves out better than they could if they were closer to home. What do you think of that argument, and what do you think of this new program?
In some senses, that's probably accurate, but what happens a lot is a lot of the kids get detached. When I was placed in McCormick Center, a lot of the guys who were sent up are going to be there for a long duration of time. We weren't allowed to watch the news. A lot of us didn't even know what a Metro card was. So in a sense, we become absent to what's really going on in these faraway
You mean you lose touch with the community that you come from?
Exactly.
Of course, your family, presume if there was a family that wanted to visit you, it was that much more difficult. But what about the other argument, just Erica, in terms of getting away from bad influences, that it might be good to get the youth far away from what was a kind of corrupting or contributing to criminal activity influence, and therefore you'd be freer, the argument would go, to maybe take courses that were offered and to try to rehabilitate yourself and improve your life?
I think if the courses were brought back down, it would be a lot better, because a lot of the staff members can relate easier. In those faraway facilities, like me and Darren always joke, everything was subjected to like gang member activity because it wasn't known, and that caused a great conflict with the youth. I mean, outside of puberty and growing up and finding self and incarceration, then you have everything being nitpicked, which caused a lot of conflict.
You're hearing in the criminal justice world, Darren, much reaction to this program. There obviously was concern on people who had the jobs in these upstate facilities. Maybe you're still in touch with them, and some of them are being closed down, as you know, or being moved to New York City. You're hearing much grumbling, or is it the case in the criminal justice world that you travel in that people recognize that this is the right way to go?
I think a little bit of both, Fred. I have heard from people that I talk to, and they understand that this is going to impact them, that most of these kids, especially in McCormick Center, there's Tryon, which is near Ithaca as well, they have residents from New York City area, and they're probably going to be sent back if it's a medium or minimum security facility. At the same time, when you work in a staff like that, a lot of times you're dealing with what's in front of you, which is conflict, violence, aggression. You don't have time to really look at the criminal justice system as a whole and say, well, this kid would be better off in the city. The staff there probably are spending their time putting out fires like I was, and it is a difficult job. I hear sometimes the union may send out a pamphlet or something, but I think the union could really get behind these folks and say and let other people know how tough it is to work in a facility like this.
Eric, in the last couple of years, as I'm sure you know, there have been many highly publicized cases where people working, state workers in youth facilities have been attacked. They claim they've sort of been out of control, that the Division for Youth has not run them well, and that they've been intimidated by the inmates who are supposed to be, or the residents who are supposed to be under the supervision. Do you think that it could be the case, and how do you react when you hear about these incidents of these awful attacks that have occurred? And in some cases, some of the state employees have been very badly hurt.
Yeah, even when I was housed in a lot of facilities, these attacks took place on both ends. And I think one of the things that can help resolve it is the communication barrier. Will help resolve a lot of it. A lot of the kids are lost. They don't have any identity for themselves. And then here they are in these environments where they're being told, where there could be a better adjustment. And even when I went to the youth court. Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I was going to actually ask you kind of what I think is a practical question that deals with some realities out there. Do you think it may be easier in a youth facility if African-American kid is whacked around a bit by an African-American supervisor as opposed to some upstate Caucasian supervisor who doesn't really can't relate to the kid culturally, and maybe it makes things worse because of the racial difference?
No. I mean, it makes it worse, of course, with the racial.
I mean, to some degree, you have to establish a climate of control,
yes.
And some of that may involve, we don't like to face it, but the reality is, if a kid is aggressive and hits somebody, they get hit back. But it might be easier to get away with it if you're African American and the kid is African American, or if you're Hispanic and the kid is Hispanic, than it is if you're some upstate Caucasian person. Do you think that's so?
It's a possibility, but I think the approach itself can neutralize the situation. I'll give you a brief example. I went to the Harlem Youth Corps last weekend, and when I went there, the lady's saying, these kids is it's a row crowd, it's gang members, they're not going to want to hear you. And when I went in there, automatically my approach, they were asking for my email, they were telling me their stories, telling me they want to get out of the gang members. And the lady's like, how did you do it? And I was like, I related. And it made it easier for me to calm them down and get their attention rather than stand posts like you have to listen to me.
But some of these young people may be incorrigible, though, I would think, or maybe even having some mental problems that makes them very violent, and they're not open to reason, and they can disrupt an entire facility, wouldn't you think?
Yes,
yeah.
and in a lot of the juvenile facilities, they don't have the proper assessments for a lot of kids with these illnesses.
Yeah. Darren, what were you going to say?
They don't, Fred. And also, you have 3 or 4 kids in a facility who their goal is to disrupt. Eric was serving a lengthy sentence, but his goal was to become a better person. There are some who know they're going to Department of Corrections, and their goal is to create problems, smuggle in stuff, disrupt the facility.
These are people who have long sentences, and once they reach a certain age, they're going to be transferred to a DOCS facility, a real prison, so they really don't have any interest in doing anything but just, right.
Yeah. And the state, unfortunately, doesn't have a system to separate them. Everybody's treated the same in a juvenile facility. They all go to class. And trying to tell somebody who's serving 7 to life that you should read this phonics book because it's good for you creates problems.
I would think so. Just if you would, Darren, tell people where you'll be appearing tonight. I mentioned Fulton, Montgomery. It's at 6:30, is that right? Let me give you the flyer.
Thank you.
Do you know where at the facility? If people want to go, it may be that some would like to see you both, meet you both. It's open to the public,
Both
is
of
that
them
right?
are. Yeah, we're 12:30 in the theater and 6:30 in room C.
Oh, you're at 12:30 initially?
Yes.
And then, so you have 2 appearances.
So 2
I didn't realize
appearances,
that.
Yes, and room C110 They're both open to the public, and they're encouraged to come.
And this is under the sponsorship of the criminal justice program there, is that right? Do they have I assume they have various criminal justice courses, and it's the department that's sponsoring it, is that right?
That's correct. We're brought in by John Armstrong, Department of Criminal Justice, and it's funded through a grant through the FM Foundation.
And do you have any other dates down the road? Are you going to be appearing in other places? Because I know, as you indicated, this is your 4th appearance, and apparently this is becoming kind of a popular roadshow.
It is. Yeah, we're at Herkimer Community College in first week of May, and then back in Binghamton later on in June. We have to solidify a date yet.
If anybody wants to get in touch with either one of you, is there a website or something that they can go to
yes,
maybe?
We have the YBICJS.com.
I think people miss that. Say that one more time.
It's YBICJS.
YBI?
Yeah.
Just the initials.
Yeah,
YBI.
CJS.
CJS?
Yes.
Okay. .com. And they can get in touch with you if they wanted to invite you to speak, or just get some more information on what you guys have been up to.
We also have the Gmail, the same initials.
Okay, good. Just quickly, you're from Binghamton, Darren.
Yes.
A lot of excitement, or that's not the best word, interest down there in the situation involving Tom Libous, the senator, and those allegations that had come out against him. Are people talking about it down there from what you can see and hear?
People are, yes, especially with his press conference on Saturday.
It's pretty dramatic.
It is pretty dramatic,
Yeah.
and everyone's kind of waiting to see what happens.
Yeah, if anything. I mean, he was unequivocal in denying any improper involvement, but there's some other things could happen. There's no question about it. Let me thank you both for coming in this morning. Darren Schmidt, he's a probation officer from Broome County. Eric Campbell, who met Darren under unfortunate circumstances several years ago, is down in Brooklyn now running a recording studio. Thank you both for coming in. Great to have you again.
Thank you, Fred.
This is Fred Dicker live at the State Capitol. My thanks to Michael Carey, my 2 guests right here, Greg Birnbaum, all of you. Enjoy the lovely spring day. Until tomorrow, bye-bye.